Hello, hello, and welcome, welcome. I am so glad to have you all here with us today. Today is Girl Math Financial Principles that every woman needs to know. And I'm so excited to bring my shipmate, Christine Beasy, on here to give us some great tips. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Malia Lim. I am one of the founders of SHIP. She has infinite potential. It's full of speakers, entrepreneurs, and women who are experts in their field. We all come together to give women advice, tips, and just really help them reach their infinite potential. So today on your ship, I am your captain, and here we have a shipmate, Christine Beasy, and I will read her bio quickly. She is the founder and CEO of Untangled Money. Untangled Money gives women confidence about their money, helping them make financial decisions based on what they can afford while ensuring they will be financially okay in the future. Women, we need to get control of our futures, and Christine is going to help us with that today. We are going to Untangled Money is dedicated to scaling to reach 1 million women in the next 3 years to help them take control over their financial futures and shape the world that they live in. So, Christine, thank you so much for being on with us today. And before we dive in, I really have to give you credit because we did a live last year and you gave some advice to the listeners. And of course, I was there with my notebook, like, I'm going to write this down. And I started implementing it. And it was so simple. It was like every first of the month or monthly, just sit down with your finances from a point of gratitude and like thank yourself and kind of go through your finances, like almost like a Marie Kondo situation.
Yeah.
And I started doing that. And over the last year, my credit score has gone up more than, I mean, it was already good, but now it's like exceptional. And I didn't even know that was possible. But it's not like I set out for that to be the goal. I just was like, hey, this seems like a good practice. And that just happened naturally. So I am so excited for the advice and the tips that you have for us today in the areas of budgeting, investing, and money mindset. Before we get into the tips, tell us what Untangled Money is up to these days.
Yeah, generally there's two ways that you can engage with us. You can bring us into your company. We just finished an incredible engagement with one of Canada's premier business schools, working with their faculty and staff. We can come in and do a lab on personal finance for the women who work in your organization. And on the consumer side, you can get your financial health checkup to figure out, are you on the right track and what you need to do to change? So lots going on. It's a fun time, and it's really great hearing testimonials of how we've helped women, because that's why we do this, right? That's why we exist.
And it's just so grateful that you're on this mission to help because I mean, like I said, I didn't even know that these things were possible. And I literally have my notebook again today because I am ready to learn. Before you give us the tips, why is it so important for women to really take charge of their finances?
Yeah, 90% of women will be in charge of their finances at some point in their life. It does tend to be when we're younger, and then it does tend to be after a divorce or death of our partner. So it does tend to be not during the middle, but often, when we're younger, we can really give ourselves a lot of options if we start early, because time is one of your biggest allies when it comes to money. Having that time for that snowball to get bigger. If you start early enough, more than 3/4 of the money you'll have at retirement will come from interest or retained earnings, like money working on itself. It's not money you put in there, which is just powerful. It gives us lots of options. If you have divorce or have a death of your partner, unfortunately, those times we're really emotionally vulnerable. It's a very hard time to learn a skill set, and you need to do it in such a short period of time. You really want to go into those periods knowing what you need to know, not trying to be on the back foot and learning what you need to know. So women, I think we underestimate that we actually will need to manage our money. And then I think it just gives us that optionality and gives us more choices in the future. I think we can then invest in the future we want to see it. We can leave jobs that aren't serving us. We can leave relationships that we don't feel valued in either. So I think there's there's just a lot of benefit that comes from women being in their own driver's seats and managing their money.
Wow. Yeah. We definitely need to be prepared and, in control, the captain of our own ships, so to
Right.
speak.
Exactly.
So, okay. So we have three main tips for you have brought for us today. And the first is in the area of budgeting. Sorry, ladies. I'm not saying you gotta cut out your coffee, but let's hear it.
Yeah, and so actually, I'm gonna add two, but the first one that we talked about before was just don't sit on too much cash. There was brilliant research done by Gallagher and Sabat in the United States, and they wanted to see this guideline of 3 to 6 months saving. Was that a good number, or what was the optimal amount of cash to sit on? And so they looked at everyday people, and they actually found in 2019 it was $2,467 is the most you should sit on in cash, which is much lower than 3 to 6 months savings. Now, there are caveats. If you're precariously employed, obviously you want more. If you need access to more money, so that's like a really nice, achievable first goal, but you do need investments in case something goes wrong. You just don't want that money sitting there losing value over time. And then you also want to make sure that's emotionally working for you. So I'll give an example. We've worked with a lot of women who have done the hard work and are sitting on like $20,000-$30,000. And I say, can we pare that back to like, we think 1 month's salary is a good number for everybody. Because that'll keep up with inflation, because that number no longer holds. And then we're in Canada, so that takes into account the exchange rate as well. So 1 month's take-home salary. If that feels like something that you're not going to be able to sleep at night doing, like if you can't go from 30,000 to 4,000, let's say, well, then that's not a good solution. That doesn't work for you, because you have to be able to sleep at night. So please don't let numbers be the dictator of what your decision is. Just because it's really easy to define doesn't mean there isn't value in knowing that not having enough cash is going to make you anxious. So there are kind of those two things. And then the other thing about budgeting that's really interesting, and you kind of mentioned part of it before, is just being really aware of where you're spending money. And I really want you to find joy when you're spending. So don't kind of just purchase on the whim. That's when we get into trouble, because if we don't get enough joy from our spending, we're just going to keep spending and it'll lead to debt. That's what research shows. That's not me pontificating. That's research shows that if we don't get a satisfactory amount of joy from the money we all work really hard to get, and we feel justified and valued in the work we do and able to buy nice things for ourselves, if you can't do that, you're gonna get into trouble. So, but where we could improve is stop spending on these like things that don't move our joy dial, right? Like, just figure out ways to get that stuff free or cheap and focus on what you really want. It's not frivolous. It's important. Focus there, figure out how to spend it, figure out how to not spend other places. So I think that's a difference that we have in how to approach spending.
Nice. The joy dial. I like that. Before you swipe the card, where is this register on the joy dial? Because we have to put those joy coins in the bank just as much.
Yeah.
And okay, so this 1 month, a little earth-shattering, because I grew up on you need 6 months salary saving, and I just assumed everybody else, everybody knows this is like a rule of thumb. This is a little earth-shattering. 1 month. So if someone has their 6 months of savings right now, why is it that money is losing, and how do they position themselves to have access to that money instead of sitting on losing money? Like, how do they make that transition?
So why are they losing money? I think we all recognize that prices normally go up over time. I think not a lot of us think about the fact that means the value of what we can purchase with $1 goes down over time. So we like to talk in finance about a 2% inflation rate. That's the sort of ideal. That's what the Fed is and the Bank of Canada are pushing towards. They really want this like 2% inflation. Well, with a 2% inflation rate, every 35 years, the value of your cash is worth half. So over the course of your career, it'll be worth half. So let's say you have $10 at the start of your career, 35 years in, you're only going to be able to purchase $5 worth of goods and services with that. It's gonna still say $10, but the cost of everything is gonna be double. On that sort of basis. So it's really important for us to understand that cash is a depreciating asset. And so why sitting on it, we're losing ground to our goals, right? So what can you do differently? Well, ideally, and I'm skipping ahead, ideally you're investing it and you're getting a pretty healthy rate of return on it. That can be really uncomfortable when you're just getting started. So maybe start with a low risk something, right? Put it in, I think BAs are still a thing in the States, bankers acceptance, like some sort of low risk, not locked in place where you can get a little bit of return. High interest rate savings account, high yield savings account. They're not usually great, but they're better than nothing. And it's a good place to start. And then start learning about investing, get your financial plan, figure out where you're going, where you are, how you're going to get there, figure out what you need to do, and then work on taking the progress, not perfection, of getting there, right? Take the small steps. What's the next small thing I can do to get myself into this position? So maybe ideally you want to get into, a growth portfolio, but you start with low risk. So because you just dip your toe in the water. But just if it's sitting in cash, it can be very damaging.
I love it. And spoiler alert for everyone, at the end, Christine has a special offer for those of you who are looking to judge your financial plan. She's here to help. Okay, so spoiler alert, stay around for that. Great. This is great. And I've heard, on TikTok, some financial investors talking about, high yield accounts with here and there. And so that's kind of what they're talking about, that transition into more of a investor mindset than a saver's mindset. I love it. So then that brings us to the next question, or the next category is investing.
Yes.
Right? So you have some tips for us when it comes to investing, and you've already started, because I've already got some action items for myself after this call.
Amazing. Yeah. So when it comes to investing, I think there's this huge misunderstanding about women's capabilities and skills around money in general. So would love to hear in the chat, do you feel like men or women are better at money? And so we can look at two things. Who is the better saver, men or women? And then who's the better investor, men or women?
Let us know in the comments.
Yes.
Who's the better saver?
Or who do you think? Right? Like who, right?
What comes into your mind?
Yeah. And then, so when we look at the research and the data, we see that women outsave their male counterparts, dollar for dollar, pound for pound. We save more of our take-home income than our male counterparts do. And I don't want to disparage any men. It's not to say that they're not as good at it than us, but I really want to push back against the notion that women are bad with money, because we hear that, or I certainly internalize that. I don't know why I have that idea, but I just feel like women are bad with money. And so the research shows we are not. We are great at saving. And then on the investing side, we are incredible at investing, both at the professional level, which is who I used to be, a professional investor, and then at the retail level, which is you and me now, normal people without outsized access to more and better information. So someone who's not sitting at a Bloomberg terminal all day doing this as a profession. And so women outperform men in every data disaggregated study they've ever looked at this on the investing side. We are great with money. So we, on a risk adjusted basis, so taking the same level of risk, we are better than men. So I don't want to make you more like men, right? I don't want you to invest in the way that's dominant in society, right? That is not good. The industry has really figured out how to sell to men who are the most active in the industry. And so they want to see movement, right? I got paid when I was in the industry, every time there was a transaction. That was how I made money. So I wanted to figure out how do I make you transact? Well, women are kind of like not that involved in the industry, right? So we're more of the set it and forget it. And so because we're not transacting as much, we actually get really big outsized returns on this. So this is like a career making amount. And I love this adage that says investing is like a bar of soap. The more you play with it, the smaller it gets, right? So just keep that in mind when people are coming with ideas. And I think a lot of women, we don't even get this whisper network of ideas. So you don't get the like, hey, my guy on the golf course gave me this like hot tip, right? We don't hear about it. And that's great for us, right? But we are incredible at investing. What can we improve? We don't take enough risk when we invest. We invest in conservative portfolios, places where we feel comfortable. None of us invest in like the aggressive portfolio, right? But that's so interestingly, we ran the numbers. Women cannot save their way to retirement. You cannot save your way. You would have to put more, and maybe it's a Canadian thing, but you would have to, because our taxes are so high, but you would have to, in Canada, you'd have to put more than your take-home income away to save for retirement.
Wow.
So you cannot do it. And this is like my personal one, because I just like saving. It's hilarious. I don't like, I have to force myself to invest. I have to look at the pictures. I have to like look at the things and be like, yes, that's where I want to go. In order to get there, I have to take these steps. I'm going to do it. And I learned a lot. So I'm more comfortable, but I still am not, it's not innate. It isn't my instinct. So we have to invest. And then we ran the numbers again, and at 4.5%, which is on a long-term horizon, a conservative portfolio expected return. It's a great planning number. Sometimes we're a little higher than that, but we're not always. So 4.5% is what I would expect a portfolio that has. So half of the financial flowers are in stocks or equity, which is ownership in a company, and half of the financial flowers are in bonds or loans. So then they call it fixed income. So it's a half and half portfolio. That's where the industry pushes us. That's where what we're drawn to. We need to get our money growing. So we need a growth or aggressive portfolio. If you have more than 10 years until you need the money, that is a more appropriate investor's perspective. So as an investor, I look at it in time buckets. When do I need the money? And if I have more than 10 years, I want a growth or an aggressive. So that's 80% in stocks, or 100%, 80 to 100% in stocks. So 80% if I have 10 years, 100% if I have 20 years. And again, it's not investing advice specifically, but if you get a diversified bouquet like these ETFs, Betterment in the States, up in Canada, Quest Wealth is amazing. You can buy these pre-made bouquets. They're really diversified. You just set them, you buy them, you set it, forget it. And you about 10 years from retirement is when you want to start thinking about it again. So we just need to get our money working for us harder. And that is going to solve a lot of our problems, because we just don't get our money working hard enough for us. If, again, that's not emotionally available for you, you can do other things, right? Like you can say, I get women all the time that's like, great, Christine, I'm glad you're comfortable with all your financial knowledge investing in an aggressive market. I am not. I think it's a casino and I just don't want to do it. And we're like, okay, great. Thanks for letting us know. Let's look at some other things we can work with. What else can we change? So I just think women need to know that if they want the retirement that we all kind of fantasize about, that costs more money, that needs a higher risk. And then we can manage those expectations. If one of those things doesn't feel like it's going to work for you, we can do something else.
Wow. This is truly like an artistic balancing act with like aggression versus the time horizon versus having to be realistic with what you're willing to do and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I love the 10-year time bucket, right? Because a lot of people that don't have time on their hands feel like it's too late. And I always hear investors say like, oh, well, the next best time is right now.
Yes.
And it kind of feels cheesy because it's like, well, I mean, yeah, I do it right now, but my tomorrow is literally tomorrow. What difference is it going to make? But knowing that in 10-year buckets can put you at a different level of risk tolerance, and using those time horizons to kind of be the emotional buffer for like, I can take this risk over the next 20 years, over the next 10 years, and recalibrate at the end of that time if that's still not working for me. That is a nice metric, a nice right, because even as women, we think of our lives in decades, right? We're teens, we were early 20s, we were new moms, we were new, like we kind of see our lives in decades. And so maybe the seeds that we plant right now have 20 or 30 years maybe, and those can be risky. And we'll remember that we had little kids running around when we planted those seeds. And I think that's just wonderful. And the 4.5%, using that as a value to kind of do a baseline trajectory is
Yeah.
great, because they say the stock market's supposed to be 10%, and then real estate is supposed to be 12 to 15%. And then, like all these different of what it could be. But for the person who is like, well, I need to decide if I'm willing to take this risk, give me some realistic numbers of what I can expect. That's
And
golden right there.
someone who's not trying to sell it to you, right? Like we have seen 10% in the stock market over the last 10 or so years. But I'm in my fantastic 40s, and I was around for the dot-com bust, and I watched the markets go sideways for a decade. Meaning, if I put $100 in I don't know, before the dot-com bust, and then 10 years out, so like 99 to 2009, I had $100 at the end of the day, right? Like that's 10 years of lost time. That happens. That's a really normal thing to happen in markets, and they tend to go sideways and up, and then sideways and up. They do go down as well, but they more go sideways and up. So I think it's always scary when I hear people say, well, I need 8%, I need 10%. As an investor, I would say then you need to find someone else to manage your money, because I can't get that for you on a basis of a planning basis, right? I can get that it happens that there are periods of time, there are a lot of periods of time where that happens. That's why people are so comfortable saying it, right? Like the last 10 years, it has happened. But as a planner, that's a terrible metric, because what happens if you're short on plan, right? Like you always want the plan to be what's the worst case, and then I can check in, and if I'm doing better than plan, great, right? Like fantastic, we can adjust the plan. But you want to take your pulse check, right? Like every year is best practice, but it's not always available for women, because we have years where we're on mat leave, we have years when we're taking care of elders, so we don't always have like tons of money. But if you like every year, every other year, you want to check in with your pulse and like, am I still doing all the right things? Do we have rampant inflation? Is there a like global pandemic, right? Like these things are not outside of our control, but impact our plan. And we just want to make sure we're still on the right course, or do we need to start managing our expectations differently? Both totally valid. So yeah, I love that women, or that I love that time horizon helps. And I love that you felt like the numbers were more comfortable, because
it just makes it way easier to grasp and say, okay, I can paint my own picture, and I have values that will help direct me. That's great. And something else that we chatted about earlier this week that I love, because it's really so I help women in STEM be confident leaders and work to help them support their career advancement. And negotiating salary, negotiating bonuses, negotiating benefits packages is something that is very terrifying to a lot of women. They just feel like, if I get the offer, I have to say yes, because thank goodness they're considering me. But in fact, we have so much power, and so many times we leave that power on the table during job interviews and going after jobs, which is why I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to that and change jobs so frequently nowadays, because they're realizing that that is where your financial kind of trajectory for a career is potentially set for the next couple years.
Yeah.
And one of the aspects of it is the company matching.
Yes.
So tell us, what is company matching for those listeners who maybe have never heard of it, and why is this important?
Amazing. That's brilliant. I love how you brought that in, because it's really important. It is the best money that or the best return on your investment you'll ever get. So please, 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 if your company has these programs, look into them. So what are they? Sometimes they match dollar for dollar into something that you put into. Sometimes defined contribution pension plans are matched. So what it says is, they're often uncomfortably like weird, in the sense that they're like, on the first 1 to 3% of your, like, it just feels very like nuanced and technical and icky, and like a lot of detail, and it's boring. And so on the first 1 to 3, we'll match 50%. On the next 3 to if you invest between 3 and 5% of your salary, we'll invest blah. And the part that I think people hesitate with is, one, sometimes it's 6, you have to, like, there's a waiting period until it opens, because you have to get through, like, are you a good employee before they set you up? So there's like a waiting period. And at that point, you're used to your take home salary, and this is going to reduce. This comes off of your paycheck. And so people are like, well, I kind of need that money. But you also need to be investing for retirement. And this is usually, well, it's guaranteed money, but it's usually the best return on your investment you're going to get. So some of them are 1-to-1, meaning I put $1 in, the employer is going to match $1. Even like, I think lower ones are more common too, depending on your industry. You put $1 in, they put 25 cents in. That's a 25% rate, like, return on your investment instantly. You didn't do anything. There's no risk. The market's not going to move. It's incredible. And so we like, then we don't take that money off of our paycheck, and then we try so much, like, we have to work so much harder to do that for ourselves later. So these are hugely valuable parts, and it's massive part of retainment, like their retainment plan, right? They're doing this to retain your talent. So take advantage of it. This is like, it's wonderful, because it becomes more valuable the longer you've been there. Most of them are set up that way, that if once you've been there 10 years, they match more, or they, like, because that's their retention play. It's one of the largest retention plays that they have. But if you're not participating, there's, you're also not getting the upside later on when it's even more valuable. And then you want to make sure that you understand how much it's worth, right? So when we do this with women, well, they often say to us, like, how come the company didn't tell me how valuable and how powerful this is for my future? And I'm like, I think they have trouble, like, it's hard to articulate, right? They don't have the pictures, they don't have and then I think they probably try, but it's hard to hear it from the, like, jargon
business manager that's onboarding you.
Right? It's like 1,000 other things coming. You're drinking from that fire hose. It's a new company. You're on your 30, 60, 90. There's all sorts of things that you're worried about. And I find it icky. So, like, this is like an easy thing for me to not pay attention to, right? Like, except I know how powerful it is. So I really want you to understand that this is a huge amount of the remuneration that you're going to leave on the table if you don't take advantage of it. So find out. Sometimes there's only a period of time during the year that it opens. So find out when that is, talk to your HR person, figure out what your options are. It's worth it. It is so worth it.
Absolutely. And just a fun fact, I got company matching straight out of college, and was able to use that money to purchase a house. So, I mean, I literally, none of my own money to put down on the house to purchase a house. Like,
amazing. Huge part of your compensation. That's amazing.
Huge.
One last thing on that point. When we talk about investing, I don't necessarily always mean you have to invest in a financial bouquet. You can invest in house, you can invest in art, you can invest in all sorts of things. You just want to make sure you have an understanding of how that might grow in value, so that you're not investing in a speculation. But investing in a house is incredible as well. So well done for setting yourself up for success like that.
Thank you. I didn't know I was doing it, but I was so glad when I was like, I need how much? Hold on. I think I have an account somewhere that might have some money in it. Yes. Great. So as we get ready to close out, our last tip is around money mindset. We've already been talking about risk, but now I want you to kind of delve into how we can manage our expectations and how that money mindset is going to help us in the future.
Yeah. And this comes back to our, like, no judgment part, and then understanding that emotions around money are really an important part of this. And we have a lot of different backgrounds with our money stories, and not everything that the finance industry talks about is available to you, and not everything they talk about is right either, right? Like, there's lots of times when they've been wrong. So when we talk about money mindset, it's like, figure out where you are, where you want to go, like, find out how much you need for retirement. It's a number. There's a lot of factors, but it's kind of in and around a realm if you want to live a certain way. Right. And then how are you going to get there? Is that something that's open to you? So I like to talk about it instead of that as, like, let's say I want to run a marathon. So I can either, and I have 3 days a week that I want to run a marathon. I can either, and I go to a book and they say, oh, you have to run every day if you want to run a marathon in 1 year. And then you say, Well, I can either find more days that I can run the marathon, like train, or I can decide I'm going to run a 10K, right? Like figure out what you're working towards and figure out if that's available. If it's like, do you really want that? And is it worth all that effort to do? Some people are going to say yes, some people are going to say no. Then reevaluate your expectation. Just because the finance industry says you have to do it this way, so there's 100 ways to do this. So just find something that will work with you.
And you see nowadays, like people are retiring and they're like, oh, time to downsize, time to, empty the nest and move to a different state with different tax laws, and I feel like a lot of them are figuring that out in the moment as a response to what they have available, right? And so you're basically saying, don't wait, figure out what that's going to look like for you now, and so that you can be on your way to fulfilling your plan. And that is so empowering to know that your future is in your hand and you're literally on your way. I love it. I love it. So we have a couple special gifts for you guys for hanging out with us today. Christine has come with some resources and a special offer.
Yes. So if you want a 20% discount on your financial health checkup, put SHIP20 into the checkout on our site. It will give you 20% off. And if you put money into the chat, we will give you our investment starter. So how to get started with investing for women.
Okay, so drop money in the chat. Everybody should be dropping money in the chat to get this investor starter guide, like all of you. And then if you are ready to move to the next step and take just move forward with creating a financial plan and you want Christine to help you, which I highly recommend, go to her website, Untangle Money. SHIP20, SHIP20 is going to give you 20% off. These are the things that are going to, financial planning and all of that, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It is really a reflection of how you value yourself, your time, and just going to file your taxes once a year is not enough, right? We like to know that when we swipe those cards, it's not going to be declined and we can go get the things that make a difference in our lives and our families' lives. So don't delay. I highly recommend it. SHIP20, Untangle Money website. And we'll drop the link in the chat for you guys.
And you're also not alone. Research shows that 87% of women want help with their money.
So here we go. That's why we do this. She has infinite potential. We are here to support you in all things career and women focused topics, just to make sure that we're empowered, because as ladies, we have so much potential inside of us. And so thank you, Christine, for sharing your knowledge today. I've got some tips. I'm gonna go look up some high yield savings accounts right after this.
Amazing.
But I want to thank you for your time and your dedication to this, and really just being able to share your expertise with us today. It's been truly a blessing. So thank you. And until next time, everyone, stay ship shape, ship shape, and we'll see you on the next voyage.